you might be sitting on money. So, before you donate anything, before you clear out that attic, pause. Because all across the country, Black Décor, pieces just like the ones sitting in our homes, has collectively sold for millions. I'm talking original black dolls, vintage vinyl, blaxploitation posters, first editions, hand-stitched quilts, and that's just the beginning. So, before you drop that box off at Goodwill, let's talk. And with that, let's get started. Hey family, welcome back to Mommy Room Redo, the channel that celebrates our homes, our culture, and our creativity, one soulful space at a time. Sis, this joint right here, you just might want to share it with all your cousins. It's just that dope. In this video, we're breaking down 30 Black Décor items you already own that have collectively sold for millions. I'm going to show you what to look for, why collectors want it, and how to tell if you've got the real deal or a straight up fugazi. So, grab a pen and paper. You don't want to miss a thing. Now let's get into it. Prints, rare first pressing vinyl. Certain rare prints pressings have sold for over $20,000. Yes, I said it, $20,000. But not every Purple Rain record is paying your mortgage. Collectors look for first pressings, specific label variations, limited production runs. So, if your daddy kept records in original sleeves and never let you scratch them, that might matter now. Blaxploitation original posters. Original theatrical one-sheet posters for movies like Shaft have sold between $1,000 and $5,000. Reprints from Amazon, $25. Collectors want original fold lines, studio markings, correct paper size, and if it's been rolled up in a tube since 1974, you might want to check that. Blaxploitation soundtracks. Shaft and Superfly original pressings. Now this one is layered. Original pressings of Shaft, sung by Isaac Hayes, and Superfly, sung by Curtis Mayfield, are especially rare and have sold for serious bank in specialty vinyl markets. Not every copy qualifies. Collectors look for first pressings, original label codes, clean sleeves, and no warping. Those soundtracks that your uncle played every weekend might qualify. Early Ebony and Jet, first year or historic covers. Certain early issues of Jet and Ebony, especially first year publications or historic covers, have sold for hundreds to over $1,000 depending on the condition. Moldy stacks? Not much. But if your copies are clean, early issues that are still in sleeves, you may have something. That's cultural documentation, and collectors love documentation. Hey fam, if you think you might actually have something, check out these sites. Go to eBay, look at their sold listings and see how your item measures up. Try WorthPoint, the auction history, or live auctioneers for museum level sales, because sometimes what looks old is actually valuable. First generation Black Barbie, 1980. Now let's talk toys. The first official Black Barbie, released in 1980, mint in box, has sold between $500 and $3,000, depending on the condition and the edition. Box sealed versions have sold for higher. Played in and incomplete, much lower. And for those of you who had mamas that said, "Don't you open that box," go hug her, because that discipline might be worth something. Shindana Dolls, Black-owned toy company, 1968 through 1970s. Shindana Toys was one of the first major Black-owned toy companies in the U.S. Original box Shindana dolls have reached 4 figures in collector markets. Loose without packaging, you'll probably get much less. These weren't just toys, however. They were representation, and representation with rarity becomes collectible. Muhammad Ali action figures, 1970s releases. Early Muhammad Ali action figures from the 1970s, especially boxed examples, have sold between $1,000 and $5,000 depending on rarity. Loose and incomplete versions, however, much lower. But the 70s was peak Ali era, so anything original from that time hits differently in sports and cultural memorabilia markets. First editions: The Soul of Black Folk, the autobiography of Malcolm X, and Beloved. Now let's walk over to that bookshelf, because some of the real money is sitting between hard covers. A true first edition of The Soul of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois has sold for over $10,000. First editions of the autobiography of Malcolm X, strong 4 figures, and signed copies go much higher. Signed copies of Beloved by Toni Morrison, those have reached 5 figures. A book club edition with no dust jacket? No ma'am. But a true first printing, original dust jacket, intact, no highlighting, no scribbles, no water damage. Now that's where the value lies. And let's be honest, some of our parents brought those books brand new. So before you donate that old hardcover, because everybody has that book, open it, check the copyright page, because sometimes the difference between decor and collectible is one line of tiny print. Ernie Barnes, originals and signed prints. Now this is heavy. Former NFL player turned painter. That elongated black joy energy, that was him. The dancing bodies, the movement, the celebration. His original paintings have sold for over $1 million at auction. Yes, real documented $1 million sales at major auction houses. And even his signed numbered lithographs. Some have sold for thousands, and in certain cases well into 5 figures depending on rarity and condition. Now here's the part that matters. Back in the 70s and 80s, people bought his prints because they felt seen, because it looked like us, because it had soul. Not because they were thinking of resale value. And if your peeps loved good times and you remember that iconic Sugar Shack image, there's a chance somebody in your family bought one home. Listen carefully. If it's signed in pencil, numbered like 45 out of 250, not faded, not a shiny poster reproduction, you might want to get it appraised before you hang it back up, because some of y'all have been dusting investment level art and don't even know it. Gee's Bend quilts. Documented quilts from the Gee's Bend quilting community in Alabama have sold for over $100,000. Some museum-recognized pieces have exceeded that. But here's the nuance. Not every handmade quilt is a six-figure quilt. Collectors look for provenance, documentation, and recognized quilter lineage. If you know exactly who made it and when, that's where the value begins. Black Panther Party newspapers. Original 1960s issues. Let's go politics for a second. Original 1960s issues of the Black Panther Party newspaper have sold between $500 and $2,500, depending on the condition and rarity. And yes, universities and private collectors buy them. But here's the difference. Reprints, minimal value. Original print runs with aging paper and correct distribution dates, well, that's where the value matters. A lot of families saved those papers because they were movement material. Nobody was thinking auction house, but time turned activism into archive. Civil rights protest posters, original print runs. Original 1960s civil rights posters have sold between $500 and $5,000, depending on condition and rarity. Modern Etsy prints, those are just decorative. Collectors look for paper aging, print origin, error-correct typography. If it was carried at a rally and folded into a drawer afterward, that might prove its authenticity. Million Man March, 1995. Original programs and credentials from the 1995 Million Man March have sold between $75 and $300. Not six figures, but still culturally significant. Condition and completeness matters, and let's be honest, plenty of folks save those booklets as keepsakes. History ages into collectible status. Rare Northern Soul and Small Label 45s. Now this one may surprise people. Some obscure soul 45s, especially small label Northern Soul records, have sold for thousands in vinyl collector markets. And the wow part is, sometimes it's not the famous artist that's worth the most money. It's the obscure ones with a limited press run. So, that random little record in the crate that nobody's playing anymore, don't assume it's junk just because you don't recognize the name. Negro Leagues memorabilia. Original Negro Leagues programs, ticket stubs, and authenticated items have sold for 5 figures depending on rarity. That's right, 5 figures. But reproduced memorabilia has minimal value. So, if someone in your family saved a program from a game, especially pre-integration, that's serious sports and cultural history combined. And sports collectors do not play about their keepsakes. Cast iron mechanical banks, early 1900s. These mechanical banks, especially originals made by companies like J&E Stevens, have sold for thousands at auctions. Authentic examples with working coin mechanisms and original paint have reached 5 figures depending on rarity and condition. Many of these were produced during the Jim Crow era and include racist caricatures. They are documented pieces of American manufacturing history. They are actively collected, but they are also controversial. Modern reproductions are everywhere, and those are worth very little. Collectors look for heavy cast iron weight, fully working mechanisms, original paint, and manufacturer markings. If one has been sitting in an estate box, inherited from a relative, or tucked away in storage for decades, it may have real resale value. But hear me, I'm going to keep it 100. There is no amount of money that would have me showcase these types of pieces in my home. But this video is about choice, and the choice is yours. Mid-century gossip benches or phone tables. Now this is where design meets resale. Mid-century gossip benches, especially solid wood, designer attributed or well-preserved pieces, are climbing in value. Back then, this was just a phone seat. Today, mid-century design is hot. If it's solid hardwood, original upholstery, designer mark, no major damage, you may have more than old furniture. Check underneath for maker's marks before you toss it. This may have some value. 1970s sculptural ceramic lamps. Okay, sis, we're talking heavy, textured, studio pottery vibes. Certain 1970s sculptural ceramic lamps have resold for over $1,000, especially signed pieces or recognizable studio designs. Mass-produced department store lamps do exist, but if it's heavy, hand-textured, signed underneath, and has the original shade and wiring, turn it over and look for marks. That old lamp in the guest room might be worth checking. The Boondocks original animation art. Now this one is niche but powerful. Original production used animation art from the Boondocks, not prints, not posters. Actual production art can be collectible, especially early season material, especially if authenticated. Mass-produced prints, now that you can use for decor, but production used art, that's archive. If you know someone who worked in animation and kept original material with documentation, that hits different. Early hip-hop flyers, Bronx 70s through 80s originals. This one is a sleeper. Original Bronx 1970s through 1980s hip-hop flyers, DJ Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, have sold for thousands. Collectors look for original paper, original ink, venue information, and no modern reprints. These were handed out on corners, at concerts, in schools, stapled to poles, taped to walls. If somebody in your circle saved them, now that's culture on paper, and culture sells. Black-owned beauty advertising from the 1920s through the 1940s. Now this right here, Black entrepreneurship history. Original advertising from Madam C.J. Walker, Annie Malone, or early Black-owned beauty brands can sell for hundreds, sometimes thousands, depending on rarity and condition. We're talking original paper ads, early product packaging, promotional signage, and pre-1950 printed material. They weren't saved as collectibles, they were business tools. If somebody in your family ran a salon, sold products door to door, or kept old packaging in a drawer, check it. Collectors value age, clean condition, clear brand attribution, and no reproduction marks. Reprints are everywhere, so original paper from that era are valuable. Historic Black church architectural artifacts. All right, so documented pieces from historic Black churches such as stained glass panels, carved pulpits, original pew plaques can command serious collector interest, especially if the church closed and the items were preserved. But this only applies if the piece was documented, the church has historical significance, and there's proof of origin. Now, your random church decor is just sentimental. Historic artifacts with paperwork, however, that's a different category. If someone brought home a carved piece when a church shut down decades ago, those items deserve a second look. Signed civil rights documents. So in this category, I'm considering the actual documents as well as if the signature is by a civil rights leader. This document right here is a letter from Malcolm X when he was in prison, sold for almost $17,000. Here's Malcolm X's signature on one of his books. I don't know what this went for, but I'm sure it was a lot. Here's a signature by Martin Luther King, and his is highly sought after as well. When it comes to signatures, authentication is everything. Collectors look for verified signatures, documentation, condition, as well as historical context. If someone in your family attended events and kept signed programs, that's not clutter. That's potential archive material, and it could be valuable. Rare jazz concert posters. We're talking original venue prints here, not reprints. We're looking for posters from Ella Fitzgerald, John Coltrane, Duke Ellington. Those have sold for thousands of dollars. Collectors care about original venue information, the correct size, fold lines, and no modern print marks. These were stapled to poles, not sold as wall art. If it happened to survive, that's a rarity. So check before you flatten and frame those posters. Early commercial Kwanzaa sets. Now this one might surprise you. Early box Kwanzaa sets from the 1970s, especially first commercial releases, can sell in the hundreds and sometimes more depending on completeness and condition. Collectors look for the original box, complete candle holders, no replacements, and early production dates. Mass-produced modern sets are just decorative, but early cultural release sets from the 70s, now that's history. If your family celebrated early on and kept the box, research before you donate. Elizabeth Catlett, Sculptures and Prints. Now this is fine art territory. Elizabeth Catlett, a sculptor and printmaker, has had work sell for hundreds of thousands at major auction houses. Her sculptures are museum level. Her signed prints are collectibles. Back in the day, some families bought her work because it reflected dignity, strength, and Black womanhood. If you have a signed Catlett print, a documented sculpture, and a certificate of authenticity, that's not just decor. That's blue chip art history, and it's valuable. Jacob Lawrence. Original Lawrence paintings have sold for hundreds of thousands, some exceeding that depending on the piece and provenance. Original paintings could be high six-figure territory, and signed prints are still collectible. If your family supported Black artists in the 60s and 70s and bought early, check the signature, check the numbering, and check the condition, because this is auction house art. Screen used Black TV sitcom pieces. All right, so if someone in your family ever worked at a Black sitcom, pay attention. Authenticated screen used pieces from shows like A Different World, Living Single, Fresh Prince, and The Cosby Show have sold for thousands at studio auctions. What am I talking about? Well, actual set used props, art that hung in the background, original promo posters, and wardrobe with paperwork. Studios liquidate sets when shows wrap. Collectors buy fast. Now, why might you have something like this? Because somebody's cousin worked in production, because someone attended a taping, because promo materials were handed out, because Big Mama saved everything. If there's documentation, it's not just decor. That's television history. And television history sells. Early HBCU art and cultural memorabilia. Sis, this is HBCU history. Some of the most important Black artists, thinkers, and cultural leaders passed through historically Black colleges and universities. And early student works, campus exhibition posters, signed yearbooks, and limited campus prints have sold for thousands, especially when tied to someone who later became nationally recognized. Back in the day, we saved homecoming programs, art show flyers, signed campus pieces, framed graduation art, and yearbooks with real signatures. Because HBCU pride is different, collectors look for signatures, dates, school name, early career connection, and documentation. If that framed piece says Howard University 1978 or Spelman Art Exhibit and it's signed, that's not just sentimental. That could be early career work. And early career work could be valuable. African tribal art. Authentic pre-1960 ceremonial African art has sold at major auction houses for 5 figures, 6 figures, and sometimes more. And I'm not talking about the decorative pieces from the airport gift shop. I'm talking about documented ceremonial art. Back in the 60s and 70s, African art meant pride, reconnection, and identity. A lot of families bought these pieces as statements, not as investments. Collectors today look for age. Pre-1960 is key. Provenance, tribal origin, natural wear, and expert authentication. Mass-produced decor may be decorative, you just won't get any money for it. But authentic ceremonial art with documentation, that's an artifact. If there's a heavy carved mask hanging in your hallway that's been there since the Black Pride era, Take it down carefully, turn it over, look for age, patina, tool marks. Sometimes the piece that's been quietly blessing the wall for 50 years is worth more than you think. So, do you think you have any of these valuable black decor items in your home? Let us know down in the comments. Quick temperature check. I just want to make sure you're good. If this is your kind of conversation, I want to invite you to a deeper connection by joining the Redo Room right here on YouTube. This is Black Decor with intention and meaning. To join, just click the join button next to subscribe on this video. If you're watching on your phone, tap join right under the video title. Everything happens right here on YouTube. As you know, I like to include a soft life moment in every video. To that end, I want to remind you that Black families preserved culture without knowing the market would ever value it. We kept books, we saved programs, we framed art, we passed things down, not for resale, for remembrance. And now the world is finally catching up to what we always knew. Our stories have value. So tonight, maybe don't rush to declutter. Maybe sit with what you have, because some things are worth more than money, and some things are worth protecting. Thanks for hanging out with me today, family. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell so you won't miss the next soulful, inspirational moment right here on Mommy Room Redo.